What if I told you that the most powerful gratitude practice ever recorded wasn't written by a modern self-help guru, but by an ancient king who had just survived the fight of his life? Psalm 18 isn't just David's thank you note to God. It's a psychological masterpiece that reveals why gratitude is actually a form of warfare against depression, anxiety, and helplessness. You're about to discover how David transforms from victim to victor using language so powerful it literally rewires your brain for resilience. This 50-verse psalm contains more neuroscience principles than most therapy sessions, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why celebrating your victories isn't just nice, it's essential for your mental health. Here's what nobody tells you. The words you use to describe your rescue actually determine whether you'll be strong enough to face the next battle. I love you, Lord. You are my strength. David doesn't start with a request or complaint. He starts with a declaration of love. The Hebrew word rachum means deep, tender affection, like the love between parent and child. But notice what comes immediately after. You are my strength. David connects emotional intimacy with practical power. This isn't sentimental religion, it's strategic relationship building. Modern psychology calls this secure attachment. When you have a reliable source of strength and support, you can take bigger risks and face greater challenges. David understands that strength isn't just physical power or willpower. It's the confidence that comes from knowing you're not alone. When you truly love someone who has proven reliable, you can borrow their strength for your battles. This is why toxic relationships drain your energy while healthy relationships multiply it. David isn't just expressing feelings here. He's establishing his foundation for everything that follows. Without this secure base, none of his courage or victories would be possible. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my Savior. My God is my rock, in whom I find protection. He is my shield, the power that saves me, and my place of safety. David uses 7 different metaphors for security in just 2 verses. Rock, unmovable foundation; fortress, strategic protection; savior, active rescue; shield, defensive barrier; power, supernatural strength; place of safety, refuge and rest. This isn't accidental. David is programming his mind with images of complete security. Neuroscience has discovered that repeated metaphors actually create neural pathways. When you consistently describe your support system using strong, protective imagery, your brain starts operating from that sense of security even in dangerous situations. David isn't just describing God, he's training his own mind to feel safe and confident. This is advanced psychological technique disguised as ancient poetry. The reason David can face impossible odds isn't because he's naturally brave, it's because he's systematically conditioned his mind to operate from security rather than fear. What metaphors do you use to describe your support system? Are they empowering or limiting? I called on the Lord, who is worthy of praise, and he saved me from my enemies. The ropes of death entangled me. Floods of destruction swept over me. The grave wrapped its ropes around me. Death laid a trap in my path. Now David gets specific about the crisis that prompted this celebration. He uses three metaphors: ropes that entangle, floods that overwhelm, and traps that ensnare. Each image suggests being caught, trapped, unable to escape through your own effort. The word entangled means twisted together like a net. The more you struggle, the tighter it becomes. Floods of destruction suggests being overwhelmed by forces beyond your control. And death laid a trap implies that the danger was carefully planned and inescapable. David is describing what psychologists call learned helplessness, situations where normal coping strategies don't work, where you feel completely powerless. This is crucial for understanding depression and anxiety. Sometimes the feeling of being trapped isn't just in your mind, it's an accurate assessment of your situation. David validates that some problems really are too big for individual effort. Recognizing this isn't defeat. It's wisdom that opens the door to asking for help. But in my distress I cried out to the Lord. Yes, I prayed to my God for help. He heard me from his sanctuary. My cry to him reached his ears. The word "but" is one of the most powerful words in all literature. It signals a complete reversal of circumstances. David moves from describing helplessness to describing hope in one word. Distress here means being pressed, squeezed, constrained. But instead of panic or despair, David's response is strategic. He cries out specifically to his established source of strength. This isn't random desperation. It's targeted help-seeking based on a proven relationship. The phrase "my cry reached his ears" suggests not just that God heard, but that he was listening, waiting, ready to respond. This transforms how you think about asking for help. Instead of seeing it as bothering someone or admitting failure, David frames it as activating a relationship designed for exactly this purpose. When you've invested in building strong relationships during good times, you can access that strength during crisis times. David's strategic thinking, even in panic, is remarkable. He doesn't just scream into the void. He directs his cry to someone he knows will answer. Then the earth quaked and trembled. The foundations of the mountains shook. They quaked because of his anger. Smoke poured from his nostrils, fierce flames leaped from his mouth, glowing coals blazed forth from him. David describes God's response to his cry using the most dramatic imagery possible: earthquake, mountain shaking, fire breathing, divine warrior. This isn't meant to be taken literally. It's David's way of processing the overwhelming power that came to his rescue. When you've been helpless and trapped, and suddenly everything changes in your favor, it feels supernatural. The word anger here doesn't mean God was mad at David. It means righteous indignation against injustice. Someone powerful got angry on David's behalf. This is psychologically crucial. When you're under attack, you need to know that ultimate justice is on your side. David processes his rescue as cosmic intervention because that's what it felt like from his perspective. This isn't exaggeration, it's accurate emotional description. When you've been drowning and someone pulls you out, their strength feels infinite. David teaches us to celebrate our rescues with the same intensity we felt our desperation. He opened the heavens and came down. Dark storm clouds were beneath his feet. Mounted on a mighty angelic being, he flew, soaring on the wings of the wind. He shrouded himself in darkness, veiling his approach with dark rain clouds. David continues his cosmic imagery, describing divine intervention like a supernatural military operation. God doesn't just help, he comes down personally, flying on storm clouds, riding angels like war horses. This language serves multiple psychological purposes. First, it processes the intensity of David's emotional experience. His rescue felt this dramatic. Second, it establishes the ultimate power and authority behind his victory. Third, it creates what psychologists call narrative coherence, a story that makes sense of overwhelming experiences. David isn't just grateful, he's making meaning from his suffering and rescue. The imagery of darkness and storm clouds is particularly interesting. Sometimes help comes in ways that look scary or confusing at first. Divine intervention doesn't always look pleasant or comfortable. Sometimes it looks like upheaval and chaos before it looks like rescue. David learned to recognize God's help even when it came wrapped in frightening circumstances. Thick clouds shielded the brightness around him and rained down hail and burning coals. The Lord thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded amid the hail and burning coals. He shot his arrows and scattered his enemies. Great bolts of lightning flashed, and they were confused. David describes his enemies being overwhelmed by the same power that rescued him. The imagery is military arrows, lightning bolts as weapons, enemies being scattered and confused. This teaches something profound about how God fights for his people. The same power that protects you overwhelms your opposition. The word confused means they lost their ability to think strategically or coordinate their attacks. When divine intervention happens, it doesn't just help you, it actively disrupts the plans of those working against you. David celebrates not just his own rescue, but the complete disarray of his enemies. This isn't cruelty, it's justice. Sometimes the only way to truly be safe is for your opposition to be thoroughly defeated. David's celebration includes watching his enemies experience the helplessness they tried to impose on him. This is psychologically healing. Seeing justice served helps trauma survivors move forward with confidence. Then at your command, O Lord, at the blast of your breath, the bottom of the sea could be seen, and the foundations of the earth were laid bare. He reached down from heaven and rescued me. He drew me out of deep waters. David shifts from describing the cosmic battle to describing his personal rescue. The imagery moves from overwhelming power displays to gentle, personal intervention. God reaching down and drawing him out like pulling someone from drowning. The phrase deep waters connects to his earlier metaphor of floods of destruction. David was drowning in circumstances beyond his control, and God personally pulled him to safety. The word drew means to pull with steady, determined strength, not violent yanking, but firm rescue. This is intimate imagery after all the cosmic warfare descriptions. David understands that the same power that shakes mountains and scatters armies also reaches down with tender care to lift him up. This balance between overwhelming power and personal tenderness is psychologically profound. You need to know that ultimate power is on your side, but you also need to know that power cares about you personally. David experiences both divine transcendence and divine immanence in his rescue. He rescued me from my powerful enemies, from those who hated me and were too strong for me. They attacked me at a moment when I was in distress, but the Lord supported me. David gets specific about why he needed supernatural help. His enemies were powerful and too strong for him. This wasn't just difficult, it was impossible through human effort alone. The phrase, "they attacked me at a moment when I was in distress," reveals the cruel timing. His enemies chose to strike when he was already weakened. This is predatory behavior, attacking someone when they're down. But David contrasts their opportunistic cruelty with God's faithful support. The word supported means to lean on, to prop up, to provide stability when you can't stand alone. While his enemies tried to take advantage of his weakness, God provided strength exactly when it was needed most. This teaches an important principle about timing. Your enemies may choose when to attack, but your support system chooses when to strengthen you. David learned to expect help at exactly the right moment, not necessarily when he wanted it, but when he needed it most. This trust allows him to remain confident even when circumstances look impossible. He led me to a place of safety. He rescued me because he delights in me. Here's the heart of David's confidence. He knows he is delighted in. The Hebrew word chafetz means to take pleasure in, to find joy in someone's existence. This isn't about David earning rescue through good behavior. It's about being valued for who he is. This psychological foundation changes everything. When you know you're delighted in by ultimate power, you can face any opposition with confidence. You're not fighting for approval or earning protection. You're operating from security and love. David understands that his rescue wasn't a business transaction or reward for good behavior. It was an expression of divine affection. This is crucial for mental health. When your sense of worth comes from being delighted in rather than from your performance, you develop unshakable confidence. You can take risks, face challenges, and even fail without losing your core identity. David's victories flow from this secure foundation, not the other way around. The place of safety isn't just physical protection. It's the psychological security that comes from knowing you're valued and loved. The Lord rewarded me for doing right. He restored me because of my innocence. For I have kept the ways of the Lord. I have not turned from my God to follow evil. Now David addresses a potential misunderstanding. He just said he was rescued because God delights in him, which sounds like unconditional love. But he also says he was rewarded for doing right, which sounds like earning favor through good behavior. Both are true, and understanding this paradox is crucial for psychological health. David is delighted in for who he is, but he's also rewarded for his choices. Love and justice work together, not against each other. David's innocence isn't sinless perfection. It's integrity in his specific circumstances. He kept the ways of the Lord means he maintained his values and principles even under pressure. He didn't compromise his character to escape his problems or gain advantage over his enemies. This is what earned reward, not perfect behavior, but consistent character. When you maintain integrity under pressure, you create conditions for sustainable victory. Shortcuts and compromises might provide temporary relief, but they undermine long-term strength. David's rescue is both gift and reward, both grace and justice. I have followed all his regulations. I have never abandoned his decrees. I am blameless before God. I have kept myself from sin. David continues his claim of integrity, but notice the specific language. He hasn't abandoned God's decrees even when following them was costly. The word blameless doesn't mean sinless. It means complete or having integrity. David maintained wholeness of character even when it would have been easier to compromise. Kept myself from sin means he actively resisted temptation rather than just passively avoiding it. This is important for understanding how character relates to blessing. David isn't claiming moral perfection. He's claiming moral consistency in his relationship with God and in his conflict with his enemies. He fought fairly, told the truth, and maintained his values even when his enemies didn't. This created the conditions for God to fight on his behalf without compromising divine justice. When you maintain integrity in conflict, you give ultimate justice room to work on your behalf. But when you compromise your character to win, you tie the hands of divine intervention. David's victory is sustainable because it's based on truth and righteousness, not manipulation or deception. The Lord rewarded me for doing right. He has seen my innocence. To the faithful, you show yourself faithful. To those with integrity, you show integrity. David reveals a profound principle. God mirrors the character of those he deals with. If you approach with faithfulness, you experience divine faithfulness. If you approach with integrity, you experience divine integrity. This isn't God changing. It's God responding appropriately to different approaches. The word show means to reveal or demonstrate. God reveals different aspects of his character based on what people need to see and experience. To David, who approached with faithfulness and integrity, God revealed himself as faithful and full of integrity. This teaches something crucial about relationships. The character you bring out in others reveals something about your own character. If you consistently experience betrayal and deception from others, it might be because that's what you're projecting. If you experience faithfulness and integrity, it's likely because that's what you're offering. David's confidence comes from knowing that his character attracts corresponding character from both God and healthy people. This creates an upward spiral of positive relationships and increasing strength. To the pure, you show yourself pure, but to the crooked, you show yourself shrewd. You rescue the humble, but you humiliate the proud. David continues this principle of divine mirroring, but adds important contrasts. To the crooked, those who are twisted, deceitful, or manipulative, God shows himself shrewd, meaning cunning and impossible to deceive. This isn't God becoming evil, it's God matching strategy to strategy, ensuring that manipulative people can't take advantage of divine goodness. The contrast between humble and proud is particularly relevant. God rescues the humble, those who acknowledge their need for help, but humiliates the proud, those who think they can handle everything through their own power and cleverness. This explains why David was rescued while his enemies were defeated. David humbled himself to ask for help. His enemies relied on their own strength and cunning. The principle is clear. Your attitude toward ultimate authority determines how ultimate authority responds to you. If you approach with humility and honesty, you experience rescue and support. If you approach with pride and manipulation, you experience resistance and defeat. David learned to position himself for blessing through humility rather than demanding victory through pride. You light a lamp for me. The Lord my God lights up my darkness. In your strength I can crush an army. With my God I can scale any wall. David moves from describing his rescue to describing his ongoing empowerment. The lamp imagery suggests guidance and hope in confusion and despair. But then David makes an incredible claim. In God's strength, he can crush an army and scale any wall. This isn't arrogance, it's confidence based on experience. Having been rescued from impossible circumstances, David now knows that impossible is just another word for requiring divine help. The phrase crush an army doesn't mean David becomes violent or destructive. It means he can overcome overwhelming opposition. Scale any wall means no obstacle is permanently limiting. This is the psychological transformation that comes from experiencing supernatural rescue. You stop seeing problems as permanent limitations and start seeing them as temporary challenges requiring the right kind of help. David's confidence isn't in his own ability, it's in his access to unlimited power through relationship. This completely changes how you approach difficulties. Instead of being intimidated by the size of problems, you focus on the strength of your support system. God's way is perfect. All the Lord's promises prove true. He is a shield for all who look to him for protection. For who is God except the Lord? Who but our God is a solid rock? David celebrates the reliability and uniqueness of his source of strength. God's way is perfect means his methods and timing are flawless, even when they don't make sense from human perspective. All the Lord's promises prove true is based on David's track record of experience. He's tested these promises and found them reliable. The rhetorical questions at the end assert God's uniqueness. No other source of help is ultimately reliable. This isn't narrow religious thinking, it's strategic relationship assessment. David has tested various sources of strength and security and found only one that never fails. The word rock emphasizes stability and permanence while everything else shifts and changes. This foundation remains solid. This kind of tested confidence gives David courage to face new challenges. He's not hoping his help will show up. He's certain it will based on past experience. This is how victory in one area creates confidence for victory in other areas. Your track record of divine faithfulness becomes the foundation for future boldness. God arms me with strength, and He makes my way perfect. He makes me as sure-footed as a deer, enabling me to stand on mountain heights. He trains my hands for battle. He strengthens my arm to draw a bronze bow. David describes the ongoing empowerment that follows rescue. He's not just saved from his problems, he's equipped for future challenges. Arms me with strength is military language, being equipped with weapons and armor for battle. Makes my way perfect means God smooths his path and guides his decisions. The deer imagery is particularly beautiful. Deer are incredibly agile and can navigate dangerous terrain with confidence and grace. David feels that same supernatural agility in navigating life's challenges. Stand on mountain heights suggests accessing places of advantage and perspective that would normally be too dangerous or difficult to reach. The training imagery in verse 34 is crucial. God doesn't just fight David's battles for him, he trains David to fight effectively himself. Bronze bow was a particularly difficult weapon requiring great strength and skill. David is describing supernatural enhancement of his natural abilities. This is the difference between rescue and empowerment. Rescue gets you out of immediate danger. Empowerment prepares you to handle future dangers yourself. You have given me your shield of victory. Your right hand supports me. Your help has made me great. You have made a wide path for my feet to keep them from slipping. David continues, describing his empowerment with imagery of support and guidance. Shield of victory doesn't just provide protection, it ensures winning. God's right hand represents his primary power and attention. David has access to the best God has to offer. Your help has made me great is remarkable. David attributes his greatness not to natural talent or hard work, but to divine assistance. This isn't false humility, it's accurate assessment. The wide path imagery suggests that God has made David's way forward clear and safe. Instead of having to navigate narrow, dangerous passages where one wrong step means disaster, David has a broad, secure path ahead of him. This is what divine favor looks like practically. Clarity about direction, security in your steps, and confidence in your destination. David isn't stumbling around trying to figure out what to do next. He's walking confidently on a path that's been prepared for him. This doesn't mean life becomes easy, but it means life becomes purposeful and directed. I chased my enemies and caught them. I did not stop until they were conquered. I struck them down so they could not get up. They fell beneath my feet. Now David describes his role in the victory. Notice the shift from being rescued to being empowered to actively pursue victory. The verb tenses are important. I chased, I caught, I struck them down. David isn't passive in his deliverance. He becomes an active participant in defeating the forces that oppressed him. This is crucial for psychological healing from trauma or oppression. At some point, you need to move from being rescued to being empowered to fight back. The phrase, "I did not stop until they were conquered," shows David's determination and persistence. This isn't revenge. It's ensuring complete victory so the threat doesn't return. They could not get up means the defeat was thorough and lasting. This teaches an important principle about spiritual and psychological warfare. Partial victories often lead to renewed attacks. Sometimes you need to completely defeat the forces opposing you, not just escape from them. David learned that running away from problems isn't always the best strategy. Sometimes you need to turn around and fight until you win decisively. You have armed me with strength for the battle. You have subdued my enemies under my feet. You placed my foot on their necks. I have destroyed all who hated me. The imagery becomes more intense as David describes total victory over his enemies. Armed me with strength emphasizes that his power for battle comes from God, not from his own natural ability. Subdued my enemies under my feet is ancient imagery for complete conquest. Having your foot on someone's neck was a symbol of total defeat and submission. This might sound harsh to modern ears, but David is describing the complete reversal of power dynamics. Those who tried to oppress and destroy him are now completely powerless to harm him. I have destroyed all who hated me doesn't necessarily mean killed. It means neutralize their ability to cause harm. This level of victory creates lasting security. David doesn't have to worry about these enemies regrouping and attacking again. They've been permanently dealt with. This is important for understanding how complete victory works. It's not just about winning a single battle, it's about removing the threat entirely. Sometimes peace requires the complete defeat of those who refuse to coexist peacefully. They called for help, but no one came to their rescue. They even cried to the Lord, but he refused to answer. I ground them as fine as dust in the wind. I swept them into the gutter like dirt. David describes the complete abandonment of his enemies when they finally faced consequences for their actions. The irony is powerful. They called for help the way David had called for help, but no one answered. They even tried calling on the same God who had rescued David, but were refused. This isn't cruelty, it's justice. When you spend your life oppressing others and refusing to listen to their cries for help, you forfeit the right to expect help when you're in trouble. The imagery of grinding them fine as dust and sweeping them into the gutter like dirt is deliberately humiliating. These enemies had tried to treat David like garbage, and now they experienced the same treatment they had intended for him. This reversal of fortune is psychologically important for victims of oppression and abuse. Seeing justice served helps heal the wounds caused by injustice. David isn't being vindictive. He's describing the natural consequences of choosing to be an enemy of both God and his people. This level of decisive victory creates the security needed for lasting peace and prosperity. You gave me victory over my accusers. You appointed me ruler over nations. People I don't even know now serve me. As soon as they hear of me, they submit. Foreign nations cringe before me. David's victory extends beyond personal enemies to include false accusers and even extends his influence to international recognition. Victory over my accusers suggests David had been falsely charged or slandered, and God vindicated him publicly. Being appointed ruler over nations shows that David's victory had political and social consequences. His rescue elevated his status and authority. People I don't even know now serve me indicates that his reputation for divine favor spread far beyond his immediate circumstances. The phrase, "as soon as they hear of me, they submit," shows that David's victories created such a powerful reputation that enemies surrendered without fighting. This is the compound effect of divine empowerment. One significant victory creates a reputation that prevents future conflicts. Foreign nations cringe before me doesn't mean David became a tyrant. It means his reputation for divine backing made others hesitant to oppose him. This is how God protects his people, by making the cost of opposing them clearly higher than the cost of cooperation or peaceful coexistence. They all lose their courage and come trembling from their strongholds. The Lord lives. Praise to my rock. May the God of my salvation be exalted. David describes the psychological impact of his victory on potential enemies. They lose courage and abandon their positions of strength. Fear of David's divine backing makes them vulnerable and defensive rather than aggressive and threatening. This creates lasting peace through strength rather than ongoing conflict. David's response to this complete victory is worship and celebration. The Lord lives. This isn't abstract theology. It's David's declaration that the God who rescued him is actively present and powerful in the world. Praise to my rock connects back to his opening metaphors of divine strength and stability. May the God of my salvation be exalted as David's desire for others to recognize and honor the source of his victory. This public celebration serves multiple purposes. It gives credit where credit is due, it encourages others who might need similar help, and it warns potential enemies about the kind of power they would be opposing. David understands that celebrating victory properly is part of maintaining victory. When you publicly acknowledge the source of your strength, you reinforce both your own confidence and others' respect for your position. He is the God who pays back those who harm me. He subdues the nations under me and rescues me from my enemies. You hold me safe beyond the reach of my enemies. You save me from violent opponents. David concludes by describing the ongoing nature of divine protection and justice. Pays back those who harm me isn't about revenge, it's about justice being served appropriately. God ensures that those who choose to be enemies face consequences for their choices. Subdues the nations under me shows the international scope of David's authority and influence. This isn't conquest through aggression. It's recognition of legitimate authority backed by divine power. Rescues me from my enemies uses present tense, indicating ongoing protection, not just past rescue. Hold me safe beyond the reach of my enemies suggests a level of security where enemies can't even get close enough to cause harm. Save me from violent opponents shows that God protects David specifically from those who would use force and aggression against him. This comprehensive protection creates the conditions for lasting peace and prosperity. David can focus on positive leadership and building rather than constantly defending against attacks. This is the goal of divine intervention, not just temporary rescue, but lasting security that allows for growth and contribution. For this, O Lord, I will praise you among the nations. I will sing praises to your name. You give great victories to your king. You show unfailing love to your anointed, to David and all his descendants forever. David's psalm ends with a commitment to public praise and a promise of ongoing divine favor. I will praise you among the nations means David's celebration will be international, not just personal or private. This serves as both worship and testimony. Others will hear about God's faithfulness through David's story. Sing praises to your name indicates joyful, musical celebration, not just verbal acknowledgement. The phrase, great victories to your king, shows David's understanding of his role as God's appointed leader, and his victories as having significance beyond his personal benefit. Unfailing love to your anointed uses the Hebrew word chesed, meaning covenant love, loyal commitment that doesn't depend on circumstances. The promise extends to David and all his descendants forever, indicating that this relationship and protection will continue through generations. This ending transforms David's personal testimony into a foundation for lasting hope. His rescue becomes evidence of God's character and commitment that others can count on. This is how individual victories contribute to community strength and generational blessing. This incredible psalm takes us from desperation to celebration, from helplessness to empowerment, from personal crisis to international influence. David shows us that the words we use to describe our victories are just as important as the victories themselves. By celebrating dramatically and publicly, by connecting his rescue to divine character, and by using this experience as foundation for future confidence, David transforms a personal crisis into a masterpiece of resilience and faith. His gratitude isn't just thankfulness, it's a strategic practice that builds neural pathways for courage, creates reputation that prevents future conflicts, and establishes legacy that benefits others. If this psalm inspired you, share in the comments about a time when celebrating a victory helped you build confidence for future challenges. And if you want to continue exploring these ancient wisdom texts while mastering English, subscribe and turn on notifications. Next week, we're diving into Psalm 19, where David reveals how the natural world and written word work together to provide guidance and wisdom for daily life. Remember, learning English through these texts isn't just about language skills, it's about discovering principles that can transform how you think about challenges, victories, and your own potential for greatness.